Hi, and welcome back to Daf Yomi B'Iyan. In this video, we're going to be discussing some questions in Perek Lo Yachbar that Daf Yomi recently started. Perek Lo Yachbar, of course, discusses the subject of Nizkei Shechena, the laws that govern what a person may or may not do in his property when it might damage his neighbor. There's a fundamental dispute in Perek Lo Yachbar on Daf Chaf Hamid Beis, it's source 1 on your sheet, between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi. They discuss a case where, let's call him Ruvain, wants to plant a tree on his side, and Shimon has a pit on his side. The Rabbanan there say that Ruvain may not plant his tree within 25 amos of Shimon's pit, lest the roots grow out and eventually damage or destroy Shimon's pit. But Rabbi Yossi there says, no, that's fine. Zeh chover b'toch shelo. Shimon digs on his side. V'zeh nota b'toch shelo. Ruvain may plant a tree on his side, and Shimon can't complain. If he doesn't like it, then he can back away with his pit. Basically, the dispute is whether we say ala mazik laharchik asatzmo, as the Rabbanan say, it's upon the damager. Clearly, the damager here is Ruvain, so he has to back away. Or do we say like Rabbi Yossi that ala nizik laharchik asatzmo? It's upon the damagee to move away. If he doesn't like it, then he has to move away. Now, of course, Rabbi Yossi's opinion needs more explanation, and we will try and explain him a little later in the shir. But let's first talk about a dispute Abaye and Rava on Yud Zayin and Beis. The Mishnah taught us li'achbar adam boro samach leboro shachavero. You can't make a pit right at the property line of your friend's property where he has a pit, because that will damage his pit, so you have to back away 3 tvachim. The question of the Gemara is, let's say Shimon right now doesn't have a pit. In version 2 we're talking about where eventually he'll probably have a pit, but right now there's no pit. May Ruvain make a pit right at the boundary in that situation? So this is a dispute between Abaye and Rava. And Abaye's opinion is that it's fine. Abaye says, go right ahead, Ruvain, you can make your pit right at the property line. It's not a problem. Because right now Shimon doesn't have a pit. Rava rather says over there that no, Ruvain may not make a pit right next to the property line. Even though there's no pit right now, you can't do that because he's going to want to make a pit later, so it's illegal. The question is, how do we understand Abaye's opinion? Does it make sense? Because let's step back for a minute and consider, when we use the word mazik in this perek, we don't mean a mazik like in Baba Kama, like if somebody, a person or his animal goes and damages somebody's property or his person. That's not what mazik means in this perek. Mazik means that you can't do something in a way that takes away the neighbor's ability to use his side. And therefore, since, as is clear from the Gemara, Abaye is saying this in the Rabbanan. He's saying even the Rabbanan of the tree case, where they're stringent by the tree case, they'd be lenient here, and they would allow digging the bar right next to the border, since the neighbor doesn't yet have a bar on his side. The question is, how does it make sense? Ruvain is still being mazik Shimon. He is taking away Shimon's ability to use his side. So why would that be okay? In order to answer this question, I think what we have to do is first understand what Rabbi Yossi is saying. Once we can establish what Rabbi Yossi is saying, then we could talk about 2 positions, 2 ways to understand how the Rabbanan respond to Rabbi Yossi's argument, and then we'll understand 2 positions on this question of, again, when the neighbor does not have a pit yet, and this one, Ruvain wants to put a pit now, is that okay or not? And again, we're in the Rabbanan's opinion that normally, by the tree case, you can't, plant the tree and ruin his bor. Would it be okay in this case? So first, Rabbi Yossi. How do we understand Rabbi Yossi? So it appears to me that Rabbi Yossi is saying the following. Rabbi Yossi is saying that it's a little bit arbitrary to go and call Ruvain a mazik and then make Ruvain back away, because then essentially what you're doing is allowing Shimon to be a mazik. Now you're saying Shimon has the right for some reason to force Ruvain not to use his side. Why is that fair? So Rabbi Yossi says it doesn't make sense to force anybody to back away, and therefore, the halacha is you do whatever you want on your side, and if the neighbor doesn't like it, then he must back away. That's what Rabbi Yossi says. And now, we could explain that the dispute Abaye and Rava hinges on how they understand how the Rabbanan respond to that argument. That Abaye understands that the Rabbanan say like this. The Rabbanan say to Rabbi Yossi, we hear you loud and clear. That is a very valid point. It doesn't make sense to, for some reason, say that Shimon could be mazik Ruvain. Shimon could force Ruvain not to use this and not to plant the tree wherever he wants. That's true. But it's different here. Because when Ruvain plants a tree, and that tree after whatever number of years will grow roots and ruin Shimon's pit, that is considered real mazik. That's not just using your property and it affects the neighbor's ability to use it. No, you're really a mazik. Just like everybody agrees, even Rabbi Yossi agrees, as the Gemara says explicitly, in the case of giri delay, his arrows, meaning if somebody himself actually damages, let's say he wants to practice archery in his backyard, starts shooting arrows and he damages his neighbor, says, oh, I'm just acting in my property. Obviously, you can't do that. You can't really damage. So the rabbis say that when Reuven goes ahead and plants a tree, which eventually grows and destroys Shimon's pit, he's really a damager, like a Baba Kama type of damager. So of course, Reuven can't do that. That's what the Rabbanan say according to Abaye. Therefore, what's the halacha if there's nothing there that's getting damaged now? That argument doesn't apply. And therefore, it's perfectly legal. But again, Abaye is saying, the Rabbanan are saying a very specific argument against Rabbi Yossi. They're saying, it's true, it doesn't make sense to allow him to force him and not him to force him. Why would you pick and choose? But if we can define that one of them is being a real mazik, then he has to back away. But in the case of Yadzanim and Beis, where there is no pit yet on the other side, you can't call Reuven a real mazik. He's not being mazik anything. There is no pit there. That's how Abaye understands the Rabbanan, whereas Rav understands the Rabbanan completely rejected Rabbi Yossi's argument. It is, Yossi wants to say that how is it fair to allow Shimon to stop Reuven from using his side. The Rabbanan say back to that not true, meaning it's different regarding Shimon, because why is Shimon compelling Reuven not to use his side? In order not to be damaged. When you're compelling the other person to not use his side in order not to be damaged, that's a legitimate complaint, as opposed to Reuven is complaining that what? That Shimon's forcing me not to use my side because I'm damaging him. The Rabbanan say that's not a valid argument at all. If the Rabbanan are completely rejecting Rabbi Yossi's argument, then the Rabbanan's opinion would apply regardless of whether there's actual damage right now. That's not the point. As long as Reuven is doing something that is limiting his neighbor's ability to use his side, that's a problem. So it doesn't matter if there's a pit there or there's not a pit there. Either way, it's going to be illegal. That's what I believe Rava is saying. So therefore, in conclusion, to review the basic points, number one, we're explaining that the logic of Rabbi Yossi is, as Nesivos HaMishpat, source number 3 in your sheet says, the logic of Rabbi Yossi is that it doesn't make sense to say that Reuven, you have to back away because you're the mazik, because then you're allowing Shimon to be a mazik. Shimon is now stopping Reuven from using his side, so that doesn't make sense. Therefore, they can each do whatever they want on their side, and if the other person gets damaged, he has to back away. Abaye understands that the Rabbanan basically agree with that argument, just that they say that here Reuven has to back away because Reuven is a real mazik. Planting a tree and allowing those roots to grow on the other side and destroy the neighbor's pit is like a real mazik. It's just like a case of giri delay. Obviously you can't shoot arrows to your neighbor's side. So to over here, it's totally illegal. That's why Reuven normally has to back away. But if there is no pit there now, we're talking about Reuven wants to make a pit, and there's no pit on the other side, then that's fine, because it doesn't make sense to favor Shimon over Reuven. Whereas Rava again says that the Rabbanan say to Rabbi Yossi, we completely disagree with your argument, with your logic, and we say that there's a difference here between Reuven and Shimon. Shimon is not stopping Reuven from using his side in a way that's a problem, because, yeah, he's stopping Reuven from using his side because he doesn't want to be damaged. And therefore, that's totally not an argument on Reuven's part, and that's why Reuven has to back away regardless. Even if there's no pit right now, either way Reuven has to back away. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next video.